Meanwhile, President Biden and former President Trump both making trips to the Texas border this week, same day. Trump will head to Eagle Pass, where there is a problem, as Biden visits Brownsville.
President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are both planning to visit the U.S.-Mexico border in separate events very soon. This unexpected showdown over immigration has become a defining issue of the 2024 election. President Biden's upcoming visit to the border comes after weeks of consideration. It's a bit obvious he aims to remind Americans that Republicans derailed a bipartisan border deal he was prepared to sign into law. There's a lot to unpack and analyze here, so let's get to it. Biden's border trip.
Why is Biden coming to Brownsville? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Why is he coming? Can we protest? People are not happy that he is choosing right now, out of all times, to come to Brownsville.
President Joe Biden has made an interesting decision to visit the southern border, a decision that has been in the works for weeks. The purpose of this visit is to amplify his efforts and remind Americans that Republicans derailed a bipartisan border deal he was prepared to sign into law. This visit comes at a crucial time, just 1 week before Biden is scheduled to deliver his State of the Union address, allowing him to maximize the political impact of the trip. According to senior administration officials, Biden's visit to the border is not only an opportunity to address the ongoing immigration crisis, but also to draw a direct contrast between his immigration agenda and that of his likely 2024 opponent, former President Donald Trump. The officials have made it clear that they welcome the split screen of both leaders visiting the border on the same day, emphasizing that Trump's travel had no bearing on the timing of Biden's trip. Biden's handling of the border has become a significant political vulnerability as he faces a tough re-election race. A recent NBC News poll revealed that 57% of registered voters believe that Trump would handle securing the border better, while only 22% said the same for Biden. This poll highlights the challenges Biden must overcome to regain public trust on border security. The pressure on the Biden administration to take action and address the migrant crisis has been mounting. Democratic governors and mayors have been raising the issue with the White House for months, and they did so pointedly during recent meetings with the president. Immigration dominated the discussions, with Democratic governors pressing Biden and other administration officials on the topic. Several governors even encouraged the president to take executive action, even if it might provoke legal challenges. Administration officials have been actively discussing potential executive actions that Biden could take on the border. While no measures have been finalized, there is speculation that Biden may announce executive actions during his State of the Union address on March 7th. The possibility of unilateral action being announced during Biden's visit to the border on Thursday remains uncertain. The White House aims to address the border crisis effectively while navigating legal challenges and political implications. Biden's visit to the border will take place in Brownsville, Texas, where he plans to meet with Border Patrol agents, law enforcement, and local leaders. This visit serves as a way for Biden to put pressure on Republicans to take up a bipartisan deal on border security provisions. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre emphasized that Biden wants to see firsthand what Border Patrol agents do every day to secure the border, highlighting the need for additional resources. Former President Donald Trump, not one to be outdone, is also planning to visit the U.S.-Mexico border on the same day as Biden. Trump's campaign has called Biden's visit a last-minute, insincere attempt to chase him to the border. Trump is expected to be in Eagle Pass, Texas, just over 300 miles away from Biden's location. The dueling visit set the stage for a high-stakes showdown over immigration, further intensifying the political climate surrounding the border issue. The Biden administration has been facing increasing pressure to take action and address the ongoing immigration crisis. Democratic governors and mayors have been raising the issue with the White House for months, and they did so pointedly during recent meetings with the president. Immigration has become the dominant topic of discussion, with Democratic governors pressing Biden and other administration officials on the issue. The challenges surrounding the immigration crisis are multifaceted. One of the key concerns is the overwhelming number of migrants arriving at the border. The Biden administration has been grappling with record levels of migrant arrivals, putting a strain on the U.S. asylum system. Sources previously told CBS News that the president is weighing whether to severely restrict access to the U.S. asylum system in response to the crisis. The strain on the U.S. asylum system has raised concerns about the capacity to process and accommodate the increasing number of migrants. The need for additional resources, including more U.S. Border Patrol agents and asylum officers, has become apparent. During his visit to the border, President Biden plans to reiterate his calls for congressional Republicans to provide the funding needed for these crucial resources. The ongoing immigration crisis has also sparked a debate about border security. Republicans have repeatedly criticized the Biden administration's handling of the border, accusing them of failing to secure the border effectively. Earlier this month, House Republicans even impeached Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas over his handling of the border. The failure to pass a bipartisan border security deal, which took months to negotiate and included concessions demanded by the GOP, has given Democrats an opportunity to go on the offensive. Senate Republicans killed the deal after Trump announced his opposition, leading Democrats to accuse Republicans of posturing instead of working towards solutions to the border crisis. The Biden administration has been actively discussing potential executive actions that could be taken to address the border crisis. While no measures have been finalized, the administration officials have been exploring various options. The possibility of announcing executive actions during Biden's visit to the border remains uncertain, but it is clear that the White House is considering all available avenues to address the crisis effectively. Nevertheless, President Joe Biden's upcoming visit to the U.S.-Mexico border carries significant implications for his presidency and the future of immigration policy. As he prepares to meet with Border Patrol agents, law enforcement, and local leaders in Brownsville, Texas, the potential impact of this visit cannot be understated. One of the key objectives of Biden's visit is to put pressure on Republicans to take up a bipartisan deal on border security provisions. By showcasing his commitment to border security and engaging directly with those on the front lines, Biden aims to highlight the urgent need for additional resources. The visit serves as a platform for the president to make a compelling case for increased funding for U.S. Border Patrol agents, more asylum officers, and enhanced fentanyl detection technology. Furthermore, Biden's visit provides an opportunity to address the concerns of the American people regarding the ongoing migrant crisis. The overwhelming number of migrants arriving at the border has strained the U.S. asylum system and raised questions about the capacity to process and accommodate them. By witnessing firsthand the challenges faced by Border Patrol agents and local leaders, Biden can gain a deeper understanding of the situation and communicate his administration's commitment to finding effective solutions. The timing of Biden's visit, just 1 week before his scheduled State of the Union address, is a strategic move by the White House to maximize the political impact. By addressing the border crisis head-on, Biden aims to remind Americans that Republicans derailed a bipartisan border deal he was prepared to sign into law. This visit allows him to draw a direct contrast between his immigration agenda and his likely 2024 opponent, former President Donald Trump, who will also be visiting the border on the same day. President Joe Biden's visit to the U.S.-Mexico border carries significant implications for the upcoming 2024 election. As he navigates a tough re-election race, Biden's handling of the border crisis has become a sizable political vulnerability. The outcome of Biden's visit and the subsequent actions taken by his administration will undoubtedly impact the 2024 election. If Biden can effectively address the concerns raised by the American people and showcase his commitment to border security, it may help him regain public trust on this critical issue. However, if his visit is perceived as a mere political move without tangible results, it could further erode confidence in his ability to handle the border crisis. Nevertheless, as President Joe Biden prepares to visit the U.S.-Mexico border, there is speculation about the potential executive actions he may announce to address the ongoing border crisis. While no measures have been finalized, the Biden administration has been actively discussing various options to tackle the challenges at hand. One possible executive action that Biden may consider is the allocation of additional resources to the U.S. Border Patrol. This could involve increasing the number of agents stationed at the border to enhance security and improve response capabilities. In addition to addressing the immediate challenges, Biden may also announce executive actions aimed at addressing the root causes of migration from Central America. This could involve increased funding for economic development programs, humanitarian aid, and anti-corruption efforts in countries such as Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. It is important to note that while these potential executive actions are being discussed, no measures have been finalized. The Biden administration is carefully considering the legal and practical implications of each action to ensure that they align with existing laws and regulations. The ultimate goal is to address the border crisis effectively while navigating potential legal challenges and political considerations. Now let's go deeper into Biden's border policies. Biden's border crisis.
Stand back and stand by. Will you shut up, man? Listen.
In the months leading up to President Joe Biden's inauguration, his advisors engaged in intense internal debate about the fate of his predecessor's hardline border policies. The question that loomed large was how quickly should they be undone? The answer, almost always, was that Donald Trump's mark couldn't be erased soon enough. Immigration advocates on the transition team defiantly shot down a detailed memo that called for turning back some migrants who cross illegally by making them seek protection in other countries. They pushed back against estimates of soaring migration flows if Trump's policies were dismantled. But in the end, President Biden recognized the predictions that more migrants might come to the border. He was firm in his belief that the policies instituted by Trump were cruel and inhumane, and they had to be jettisoned. On January 20th, 2021, President Biden took office with a clear mandate to reverse Trump's border policies. But little did he know that almost immediately, the numbers of migrants would exceed expectations. Plans outlined in a December document to fully resume asylum processing at land crossings were soon overtaken by events. The surge in migration caught the administration off guard, and they were ill-prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. Children traveling alone shattered previous highs in March, making up the majority of the more than 4,500 people housed in temporary tents that were designed for a fraction of that capacity under COVID-19 standards. The Border Patrol encountered migrants in South Texas more often than ever before in June and July, dashing expectations for a common summer slowdown. The situation reached a boiling point in September, when about 15,000 mostly Haitian refugees were camped under a bridge in the small border town of Del Rio, Texas. The chaotic scene stretched on for days as migrants waded back and forth across a river for supplies, and families slept in squalor. Images of agents on horseback corralling refugees went viral, further fueling the criticism of the administration's response. The Biden administration's uneven response to the rising arrivals sparked sharp criticism from both the right and the left, illustrating the consequences of scrapping Trump's policies without a new asylum system in place. As President Biden and his administration worked to undo the policies put in place during and after a spike in arrivals at the border in 2019, they inherited a broken asylum system that had been a challenge for years. This fractured system would sorely test Biden's immediate predecessors and proved to be a major hurdle for his administration. In the summer of 2014, large numbers of unaccompanied children from Central America's Northern Triangle countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, showed up along the Texas border in the Rio Grande Valley. This profound demographic shift from predominantly Mexican men created what then President Barack Obama called a humanitarian crisis and left a deep impression on more enforcement-minded aides who would later serve in the Biden administration. Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras accounted for about 2/3 of all border arrests, and the number of families arriving reached an all-time high in the government's 2019 fiscal year. The spike in encounters with single adults during Trump's final year in office, after the launch of Title 42 authority, further complicated the situation. This authority allowed migrants to be expelled without a chance to seek asylum on the basis of the coronavirus, and it encouraged repeat attempts due to the lack of legal consequences. Against this daunting backdrop, President Biden took office surrounded by immigration experts with strong advocacy backgrounds. However, the administration was unprepared for the massive increase in people seeking refuge at the border. A close review reveals that the administration, stacked with seasoned immigration advocates, was ill-equipped to handle the surge in migration. Internal documents obtained by the Associated Press and AIM Media Texas, along with interviews with current and former U.S. and Mexican officials, migrants, shelter managers, advocates, and others, paint a picture of an administration caught off guard. When presented with the specifics of the reconstruction, the White House defended its record, acknowledging that building a fair, orderly, and humane immigration system would take time. However, critics argue that the administration's lack of preparedness and failure to implement a comprehensive plan has exacerbated the challenges at the border. One major structural problem that predates the Biden administration is the backlog in immigration courts. On average, it takes nearly 4 years for immigration courts to decide cases of immigrants not in custody. This backlog has added to the challenges the administration faces in processing asylum claims and making timely decisions. The broken asylum system, combined with the unexpected surge in migration, has exposed the need for comprehensive border reform. The Biden administration has taken modest steps, such as establishing a rocket docket for asylum-seeking families and restoring an Obama-era program for unaccompanied children. However, detailed plans for a humane asylum system promised during Biden's campaign have yet to be released. Still, one of the most pressing challenges faced by the Biden administration was the handling of unaccompanied minors. As required by law, the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, was responsible for taking custody of these children within 72 hours and placing them in suitable homes, usually with a parent or close relative. However, the department was woefully unprepared for the influx of minors, leading to a series of challenges and overcrowded facilities. Participants in early interdepartmental meetings revealed that Health and Human Services officials raised few warnings about the potential surge in unaccompanied minors. This lack of foresight resulted in a crisis situation with overcrowded detention facilities and prolonged stays for the children. On February 7th, U.S. Customs and Border Protection opened a large complex of white tents in the Rio Grande Valley to accommodate the increasing number of unaccompanied minors. However, the facilities were quickly overwhelmed, with more than 500 children crammed into spaces designed for only 32 under COVID-19 guidelines. The conditions in these temporary holding centers were far from ideal, with thick plastic curtains replacing chain-link fences used as barriers in previous administrations. The overcrowding and prolonged stays were a direct result of the Department of Health and Human Services' inability to take these children off the hands of the Border Patrol within the required 72-hour time frame. The lack of preparedness by the Department of Health and Human Services forced the Border Patrol to engage in the child detention business, as they had no other option. The situation was further exacerbated by the difficulty in finding suitable homes for the children and the limited availability of working phone numbers and addresses for contact purposes. Belatedly, the Department of Health and Human Services sprang into action, aided by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They opened emergency holding centers at various locations, including a San Antonio concert venue and military bases and convention centers in Dallas, San Diego, and Long Beach, California. Soon, the department had more than 22,000 children in its custody. However, even as some children were released to family members in the United States during asylum proceedings, the number of arrivals continued to rise, breaking records later in the year. As the Biden administration grappled with the broken asylum system and the handling of unaccompanied minors, they faced another significant challenge: a dramatic increase in border crossings during the summer months. The administration's optimism quickly turned to chaos as the numbers surpassed expectations and overwhelmed the system. Despite President Biden's harsh rhetoric and Vice President Kamala Harris's repeated warnings of "do not come," migrants continued to arrive at the border, driven by the change in presidential administrations and stories from friends and relatives who were quickly released in the United States. The Border Patrol's daily reports showed a sharp increase in migration flows in late June, defying the usual summer slowdown. The Rio Grande Valley sector in particular stopped more than 20,000 migrants in a single week, smashing previous records. The surge in crossings overwhelmed the Border Patrol and strained resources, leading to overcrowded detention facilities and overwhelmed officials. The administration faced challenges in processing and accommodating the increasing number of migrants, especially unaccompanied minors. The Biden administration's weekly meetings to discuss the border situation became less frequent as COVID-19 travel restrictions eased. However, any sense of relief quickly evaporated when the Border Patrol's daily reports showed a dramatic increase in migration flows. However, as the Biden administration grappled with the increasing number of migrants at the border, they faced a surprising development with Mexico. the administration had underestimated the impact of Mexico's decision in the state of Tamaulipas to no longer accept Central American families expelled from the United States. This decision severely undermined the administration's efforts to maintain control of the border and enforce immigration policies. Tamaulipas, bordering South Texas, became a hotspot for crossings, further concentrating the migration flows in the region. The administration faced great frustration and irritation with Mexico at the highest levels. Border Patrol officials and U.S. authorities had trouble getting in touch with Tamaulipas Governor Francisco Garcia Cabeza de Vaca, exacerbating the challenges faced by the administration. Mexican diplomats sympathized with the situation, but cited a child welfare law that prohibited their immigration agency from detaining children. This law required state officials to determine what was in a child's best interest in each case. Thus, knowing all this, it's clear that Biden's administration more than has its work cut out for it. And maybe reversing all of Trump's immigration policies wasn't in their best interest. But one thing remains that predates Biden or even Trump, and that is the U.S. border dilemma. The U.S. border crisis.
We're over 400 miles of brand new wall.
Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated.
The United States-Mexico border has long been a hotbed of controversy and complex issues. Throughout history, the U.S.-Mexico border has been a site of tension, conflict, and migration. To understand the current state of border issues, it is crucial to examine the historical context that has shaped this complex landscape. The story begins in the early 19th century, when Mexico gained independence from Spain. The newly formed Mexican government faced challenges in establishing control over its vast territory, including the northern regions that would later become part of the United States. In 1848, the Mexican-American War ended with the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ceded a significant portion of Mexican territory to the United States, including present-day California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. This territorial loss had a profound impact on Mexico, as it not only resulted in a significant reduction in size, but also led to the displacement of many Mexican citizens who suddenly found themselves living in a foreign country. The border between the United States and Mexico became a physical and symbolic divide, separating families and communities. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the border region experienced a surge in economic activity due to the discovery of valuable resources such as gold, silver, and oil. This led to increased migration from both sides of the border as people sought employment and better opportunities. The border became a fluid and porous boundary, with people freely crossing back and forth in search of work. However, the situation changed dramatically in the 1920s with the implementation of stricter immigration policies in the United States. The Immigration Act of 1924, also known as the Johnson-Reed Act, imposed quotas on immigration from certain countries, including Mexico. This marked the beginning of a more restrictive approach to immigration, particularly from Mexico, which had previously seen relatively open borders. The Great Depression of the 1930s further exacerbated the challenges faced by the border region. Economic hardships and high unemployment rates in the United States led to increased hostility towards Mexican immigrants, who were blamed for taking jobs away from American citizens. This sentiment culminated in the forced repatriation of hundreds of thousands of Mexican and Mexican-American individuals, many of whom were U.S. citizens, to Mexico. The border continued to be a site of tension and conflict throughout the 20th century. The rise of drug cartels and organized crime in Mexico, coupled with the demand for illegal drugs in the United States, created a lucrative market for drug trafficking. The border became a battleground for law enforcement agencies as they struggled to combat the flow of drugs and the violence associated with the drug trade. In recent years, the issue of immigration has taken center stage in the U.S. border debate. The number of undocumented immigrants crossing the border, particularly from Central America, has increased significantly, leading to a renewed focus on border security and immigration policies. The construction of a border wall has been a contentious topic, with proponents arguing for increased security and opponents highlighting the humanitarian concerns and the impact on bilateral relations. The historical context of U.S. border issues provides a foundation for understanding the complexities and challenges faced by both the United States and Mexico. It is a story of displacement, economic opportunity, restrictive policies, crime, and immigration. Nevertheless, border policies play a crucial role in shaping the patterns and dynamics of immigration along the U.S.-Mexico border. The U.S. Border Patrol, established in 1924, is responsible for securing the border and preventing unauthorized crossings. Over the years, the Border Patrol has grown in size and resources, employing various strategies to deter and apprehend individuals attempting to enter the United States without proper documentation. The implementation of stricter border enforcement measures has had significant consequences for immigrants and their families. The construction of physical barriers such as fences and walls has made it more difficult for individuals to cross the border undetected. This has led to an increase in the use of dangerous and clandestine routes, exposing migrants to risks such as dehydration, violence, and exploitation by human smugglers. The policy of zero tolerance introduced in 2018 resulted in the separation of thousands of migrant children from their parents at the border. This policy sparked widespread outrage and condemnation, highlighting the humanitarian crisis unfolding at the border. The long-term psychological and emotional impact on these families cannot be overstated. Another aspect of border policies is the implementation of immigration detention centers. These facilities are designed to hold individuals who have been apprehended at the border or are awaiting immigration hearings. However, the conditions in some of these centers have raised concerns about human rights violations and the treatment of detainees. The practice of family detention, where families are held together in detention centers, has also been highly controversial. Critics argue that detaining children and families for extended periods of time can have detrimental effects on their well-being and mental health. The issue of family separation and detention has become a focal point of the immigration debate, with calls for more humane alternatives to detention. Furthermore, border policies have had economic implications for both the United States and Mexico. The tightening of border security has disrupted cross-border trade and commerce, affecting businesses and communities on both sides of the border. The construction of physical barriers has also raised concerns about the environmental impact and the disruption of wildlife habitats. It is important to recognize that border policies alone cannot address the complex issue of immigration. The root causes of migration, such as economic instability, violence, and political unrest, must also be addressed. Comprehensive immigration reform that takes into account the needs of both the United States and Mexico is essential for creating a more just and humane system. However, we cannot ignore the impact drug cartels had on the border crisis. The geographical proximity of Mexico to the United States, coupled with the demand for illegal drugs in the American market, has created a lucrative opportunity for drug cartels and criminal organizations. These groups exploit the porous nature of the border, utilizing sophisticated smuggling techniques to transport drugs across the border undetected. One of the most significant drugs trafficked across the border is cocaine. Mexico serves as a key transit point for cocaine produced in South America, with cartels controlling the transportation and distribution networks. The drug is often smuggled through hidden compartments in vehicles, tunnels, or even by human couriers known as mules. The profits generated from the cocaine trade have allowed cartels to amass vast wealth and power, leading to increased violence and corruption. Another major drug trafficked across the border is methamphetamine, commonly known as meth. Mexico has become a significant producer and exporter of methamphetamine, supplying the American market with a highly addictive and dangerous drug. The production of meth involves the use of toxic chemicals, leading to environmental contamination and health risks for both producers and consumers. The opioid crisis in the United States has also been fueled, in part, by the trafficking of prescription painkillers and illicit opioids across the border. Mexican drug cartels have capitalized on the demand for opioids, flooding American communities with drugs such as fentanyl and heroin. The availability of these substances has contributed to a sharp increase in overdose deaths and addiction rates in the United States. The impact of drug trafficking extends beyond the immediate health and social consequences. The drug trade has fueled violence and instability in Mexico as cartels fight for control of lucrative smuggling routes and territories. This violence has had a devastating impact on Mexican communities, leading to thousands of deaths and displacements. Efforts to combat drug trafficking have involved cooperation between U.S. and Mexican law enforcement agencies. The Merida Initiative, launched in 2007, aimed to provide support and resources to Mexico in its fight against drug cartels. This initiative has included training programs, intelligence sharing, and equipment assistance. However, the challenges posed by drug trafficking remain complex and difficult to overcome. In addition to drug trafficking, the U.S.-Mexico border is also a hotspot for human smuggling. Desperate individuals seeking a better life or fleeing from dangerous circumstances often turn to smugglers to help them cross the border illegally. The demand for human smuggling services is driven by a variety of factors, including economic opportunities, family reunification, and the pursuit of safety and security. Many migrants come from countries plagued by poverty, violence, and political instability, making the decision to leave their homes and embark on a dangerous journey in search of a better life. The issue of human smuggling has become more complex in recent years due to the increased enforcement measures along the border. The construction of physical barriers and the presence of Border Patrol agents have pushed migrants to seek alternative and more dangerous routes. This has led to an increase in deaths and injuries as migrants attempt to cross treacherous terrains, such as deserts and mountains. The impact of human smuggling extends beyond the immediate risks faced by migrants. Border communities often bear the brunt of the consequences as they grapple with the strain on resources, increased crime rates, and strained social services. The presence of smuggling networks can also contribute to the rise of organized crime and violence in these communities. Efforts to address border issues and promote cooperation between the United States and Mexico require ongoing dialogue and collaboration. Regular diplomatic dialogues and high-level meetings provide opportunities for both countries to discuss shared challenges, exchange information, and explore potential solutions. These dialogues also serve as a platform for addressing concerns, building trust, and strengthening the bilateral relationship. It is important to recognize that addressing border issues and promoting cooperation is a complex and ongoing process. The challenges associated with border policies, immigration, drug trafficking, and human smuggling require sustained efforts and a commitment to finding mutually beneficial solutions. By working together, the United States and Mexico can strive to create a more secure, prosperous, and cooperative border region. Thanks for watching. Click on the videos on your screen for similar content.